Good morning.
And welcome to our online streaming audience.
Hi, online.
So watch what you say. Just kidding. Leading us in the flag salute this morning will be Michael Stedman.
Fellow Rotarians and guests, please join me in our pledge to our nation's flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our four-way test will be led by Jeff Ott.
Fellow Rotarians, friends, and guests, please join us in the four-way test of the things we think, say, and do. First,
Is it the truth?
Second,
Is it fair to all concerned?
And third,
Will it build goodwill and better friendships?
Then fourth,
Will it be beneficial to all concerned?
and what's next? Well stylized.
All right, this morning I don't have a list of visiting Rotarians. Do we have any visiting Rotarians?
Here comes the list. I know.
We have Nita Sell from Passport Club of
I will introduce her.
All right.
With me today is my good friend and colleague, Nita Sell. She is Superwoman in Rotary. So she has been in Rotary for what, 80 years now? So she is a major donor of the Rotary Foundation. She's a former president of the Tacoma 8 Rotary Club with their 3,000 members. She was a charter member of the the Passport Club of Pierce County. Very good. Pierce County, right? And she's assisting me with our committee to select the new governor for our district.
So be nice.
Nita Sell.
Very Nita. And she has the longest introduction of any gateway or any visiting Rotarian ever.
And that's how you do that.
Yeah.
and Theresa Parsons with Tumwater Rotary.
Yay, Theresa!
And does anyone have any guests this morning?
Good morning, I have with me Matt Miller, he's a senior project engineer at Lot, and this will be the last time he will be as a guest.
Yay!
Any other guests this morning? All right, we'll move on to announcements. Mary.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As many of you know, I'm working on the membership committee with the mentor program, and I want to say a big thank you for the people that signed up for our first round of mentorships. We have gone through our list. Just have a couple names left, so I'm going to send around a sign-up sheet again today for those of you that may have missed the first time I sent the list around. And basically, a mentor works with the sponsor to make the new member is welcomed, introducing them to people in the club, getting them involved in all the different activities that we do. So there's a little write-up about that. So I'm going to send this around, and if you didn't get a chance the first time to sign up, I'd sure appreciate it if you could this time.
Nate. Not Nathan, Nate.
Yay, Nate!
So next Wednesday from 3:30 to 4:30 is the next St. Martin's Young Professionals group. We are bringing in our very own Jerry Farmer from 94.5 Roxy, coming in and talking about public speaking for all of our young professionals at the university. So if you'd like to join, please do. I'll be having the event on the website with location and time as well, the Gateway website. Thank you.
Go Grace!
You guys, I had a great time last week with the business panel. I just want to thank everyone for all of your feedback. I sent out an email asking for your feedback, what you thought, gave us some what we could do better, etc. And we're going to try to put together another panel here fairly quickly, and we're going to make it just of females. in different aspects. I got a comment that we had too many white males up here. So I thought I'd just throw in some women, and we will we'll mix it up. There you go.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. And anyone who would like to be a part of any type of panel, please let me know. And I appreciate those ones that already have responded to me, let me know if they would like to be. Thanks.
Thanks, Grace. Let's hear it for Grace.
And Nathan. Come on.
Just a quick reminder, sorry I didn't send the email out, but we do have youth services committee meeting in the back, 8 o'clock in the back table. Thank you.
Today?
Today.
Yeah, today.
And Janine's gonna talk about DTA.
So, I left the country this last weekend. I know, and I took some people with me, and it was, and then they let us back in. It was very nice. I can't even imagine, I know, it was great. So, we had a really great time. We went to district training and conference, and, these are some pictures, and I don't know how I didn't make the cut. I really was actually there, but, we had a fantastic time.
He's like in every photo.
And there were a ton of people there, and we didn't end up singing God Save the Queen. I didn't, at least. But
There's Queen.
There's Queen. She was not really there, but she was there in spirit. But it was really amazing. Next year, it will not be Mother's Day weekend, but it will be in May 15th and 16th, I believe. So join us. It is really a fantastic time. You know, it's every club in the district takes part, and it's amazing to see what some of these other clubs do. We were recognized, I think, for literacy. We received an award for that, and somebody's going to come up and talk about that. There's one. He's not real good at photography or something. I don't really know what that's about.
Nice background music. Yeah. McGregor.
Yeah.
Who's a bad speaker?
That's your sexy look.
The weather was perfect. Victoria is an absolutely beautiful city. And from my understanding, the reason they have it in the different countries is they really, the district governor every year gets to select where the conference will be, and because our district governor is Canadian for a second year, that's why it will be in Victoria for a second year. So, and then 2 years from now, we will have a district governor who is, of course, from here in this area, and so it will be, I believe, at Great Wolf Lodge is what they've selected, so it's super close to home. And so I hope you'll all able to join us next year. And now put it together for Len.
Hey, Len!
Yay, Len!
All right, thank you, everybody. Just want to make sure that a couple things. We had a board meeting last week. For those who don't know, right now there is a review of some of the bylaws, and not all the positions on the board currently vote. There's some discussions on changing some of that, maybe not. The past presidents are reviewing that and are going to be making some recommendations. With that said, as you recall, last December, some of you new folks might not know, but we have an election, a general meeting here, and we had an election for officers for the 2019-2020 season starting in July. With that said, Barb Perez, as you know, ended up having to move. She had a change in her career and had to step out. She's the current secretary and was voted in as secretary. So at last week's election, the board elected nominated and elected and voted to put into the position Jerry Wilkins, who will replace Barb Perez as secretary for the balance of this year. We want to thank Jerry for his continued support. For the 2019-2020 season, well, it just gets a lot more complicated because of some of the changes that we made. So Jerry Wilkins will be taking over as secretary for the 2019 to 2020 season as well. So let's hear it again for Jerry. Jerry was going to be the membership chair, but in his stay, we're going to be moving forward. And this is an appointment on my part, but I just want to make sure everybody understands. Shannon Glenn is going to be taking over as membership chair. Back with voting positions, the incoming board votes for the Sergeant at Arms. So we voted for Madeline White to be Sergeant at Arms. Let's hear it for Madeline. And because Madeline was voted as director, we had to vote a replacement director. I know it gets confusing there, but Doug Ma is going to be the replacement director. Let's hear it for Doug Ma. So that's it for the announcements on the position changes. Just wanted to make sure everybody was kept aware of what was going on. You can always go to Club Runner and you can see the current list of officers, and you can see next year's officers coming in. We will have more updates, and certainly when we get to the change of command, which I never get the right name for it, the installation dinner, which is on June 26th. It's a Wednesday, and Kim will have more details on that because I'm not sure all the details as of now. A couple other announcements. August 15th, I know it's down the road, but August 15th is going to be a joint meeting between between 4 clubs, our club, Lacey Club, Hawks Prairie, and Yelm. And we're going to have our assistant governor there, and we're going to have our district governor visiting us. So it's a big deal. We're going to be meeting as a joint meeting to support the district governor, and that's going to end up being a Thursday noon meeting. Now, we're still talking about still having the morning meeting at regular times, but we're going to really want your support to show up and represent our club, especially to the district governor. So there'll be more announcements on that, but just want to give everybody a heads up. And finally, could Madeline White please come up to the stage?
Lady Madeline White.
So, as Kim said, our club did receive a couple awards, and one of our chair folks is not here today, but one is, and I really want to recognize Madeline. So that you know, Gateway Rotary was recognized as a Sustained Membership Growth Award. This is fantastic. This club continues to grow, continues to bring in new people. I was just hearing that we're going to have another induction next week, which is fantastic. And a lot of that work and the continued work is thanks to this young lady who's sitting next to me, Madeline White. Let's hear it for her. Great job, Madeline. Thanks, everybody.
There you go, Madeline.
It's because of all of you, so thank you.
And now Madeline gets to return to the front. It's time to induct a new member.
Again.
And you know, it's really funny, that word induction kind of reminds me of conduction in microwave, so we're gonna roast them or something.
Yeah,
But I think you're on time. So put it together for Madeline. Yeah, another week. Another person. All right, good. Matt Canelli and Nathan and Romero, please come forward.
all right. Yeah.
Now Romero's bringing him in, and Nathan's going to be his mentor. I love this mentoring program. All right, a little bit about Matt. He was born and raised in Peoria, Illinois, home to Caterpillar tractors and lots of corn. He grew up helping his parents with their very 1980s gift and balloon business, balloon arches, balloon releases, you got it. Although he comes from a long line of Ohio State Buckeyes, he chose engineering at the University of Illinois. No Buckeyes, more corn. He spent a college semester in London where he minded the gap, learned English, and got familiar with the Hubbard 3. He's been married for almost 17 years, keeping it engineered, what? Ingenuity, thank you. Good new word. With another engineer, originally from Alaska, who convinced him the Pacific Northwest is the place to be. Smart lady. Not before they spent almost a decade in Tampa, Florida, where kayaking with alligators was normal. So after their daughter was born in 2010, they moved to Olympia with their 3 dogs and a cat in tow. If he calls you for the first time, that's not a robocall, it's his Tampa area code that's tough to give it up after all these years, and yes, I thought his was a robocall. He's a home brewer with a dedicated brewery at home with 6 cake taps if you find a friend. If you need a friend. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sure you'll find lots of them. To support all that, he works at LOT Clean Water Alliance, the local wastewater utility. Wastewater jokes are commonplace, but his favorite is, you eat it, we treat it.
Yeah.
Good one, Jerry.
Yeah.
And your favorite book?
A lot of kids' books these days. I would say maybe The Lexus and the Olive Tree by Thomas Friedman.
Good job. Good job. All right. Fellow Rotarians, please help me to welcome Matt Canella.
And next is our classification speaker, Hutch. So put it together for Hutch.
I thought he'd be taller.
Good morning.
No, that's my boy.
I'm going to speed through this because I don't have much time, and you have a presentation coming up after me that's far more fascinating than I ever want to be. All right, thank you. And you're going to see as I whip through these slides that I take my job seriously, but I don't take myself very seriously at all. So you might want to know, how do you take some dork that looks like Weird Al Yankovic in the 70s and
he does, doesn't he?
And
look at the mustache. That's really good.
Is it turned on?
no, hang on. And oh, there we go.
Oh.
And turning into this.
Nice.
Da, 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 da. I never watch it, but my wife's a huge fan. This is what started it all, was my swearing in December, late December of 2016, when I was swept into office. Swept.
As what? As what?
And what she's saying in this slide, she's saying, you know, do you swear and promise to uphold the Constitution? But what she's saying is, don't screw it up and watch what you say, because they're always watching, they're always listening, which is excellent advice. So after a year of watching Bud, and almost 2 years of watching Bud and being mentored by Bud and listening and just, I mean, I was transfixed at how he did things. I found myself on an economic trade expedition with our Economic Development Council in China. And this is really short and quick. Let me go the other way now. You already saw that. Here we go.
Whoa. There's
and it was all fun and all that, and he's all cute and all that. So we went face to face, and I realized this is a freaking bear. We were allowed to touch him, but it looks like he wanted at one point where it kissed me. And that's kind of weird. I don't like you like that. You had a date like that, Jerry. Yeah. This was the only downtime we had, because they were 12 and 13-hour days, and we were on planes, trains, automobiles, toboggans, boats, and we traveled everywhere. And it was morning, noon, and night. Very, very busy. This is my very first board meeting as the chair of the board this last January. You can see the gaze look in my eyes, and Ty Messer and Gary are laughing at me. We have, between the commissions, we have about 30 or 40 boards and commissions that we are assigned to as commissioners. I'm just one of 3. But we have a whole list of commissions and boards and that we have for the citizens to volunteer and sit on, and each one has 3 to 5 to 6. And I have the list, and I have applications if you're so willing to do that, because it's difficult to find enough people, sufficient people to fill these positions, and they're vital to the county and to keep the county going, to inform the commission. They gotta get vetted and go through, and people, they term out and such.
What do they pay? What's it pay?
A what? I don't see it.
Is there a mold committee?
There should be. A more pensive moment, and I don't know what we're talking about, but it's really important. One of my fun things is I get to go out and do, each of us commissioners go out and we do about a 30-minute to a 45-minute interview in the community, and I work with Mark Friedman, the CEO of our BHO, the Behavioral Health Organization, providing mental health services and substance abuse services to folks that really need it. And so I did an interview with Mark, and then on the right, or on your right, the young lady is a peer support counselor, and the young man next to her has schizophrenia. And the day before he graduated from the True Blood program, he had been in jail and graduated from the program, which is long and intensive, and he's back on therapy, on medications, and he's thriving and surviving now in his own home. And it was a wonderfully kind of goosebumpy, kind of wonderful story of success. And that's the kind of fun stuff I love doing in the community. Oh, another pensive moment, and Gary apparently didn't want to be there today. That's Vicki Larkin. She's the executive aide for Commissioner Gary Edwards. These are guys coming up, and I didn't know they were going to be here today, but they're going to talk about the culvert fish passages. And we were in Tacoma last month or the month before, and they were not only state awarded, but nationally recognized, and you're going to talk about that, I know, for our fish passage barrier removal. But I won't spend much time on that because they're going to chat about it. And this was Earth Day, proclamations all the time, and they're all very vitally important. You'll recognize the guy with gray hair, that's me. That was a joke. Come on, Jerry.
Sorry, you got my line.
And what I got to do last month, or earlier this month, was behind the bar that Starbucks has, where a member of the community can go behind the bar. You get training in how to make stuff, and in coffee pairings, and what coffee tastes like, and how to properly slurp it and let it cook your palate. These were wonderful people at our local Starbucks where I live. And the one in the black on your far left, in the black apron, is like a PhD in coffee, a ninja, black belt. And you can't see it perhaps, but it says under her name, Lizzie, says Army spouse. And I learned about the Starbucks program to hire veterans and veteran spouses. And veteran spouses are among the highest unemployed in the country. And so they have this program they started just a few years ago, and the goal is to hire 25,000 veterans and spouses by the year 2025. They have 23,000 right now. I love that. I just love it. Our local, the closest one to us, that's a veteran store, is in Lakewood, and I'm told when you walk in, you can't help but just get goosebumps because of the art and the pictures on the wall and the people there. And I can't wait to see that. I love that. And it looks like I'm handing out the coffee, but I'm actually struggling over the $2 tip. He was going to leave. And he saw that with the government and said, no, I don't think so, no.
What, is it hard to get back through the window after you're standing there?
I'm never on the video.
Tax collection.
See, I'm not a typical politician, because politicians are kissing babies and eating hot dogs, and I didn't get the memo apparently. So I'm an elected official, so I'm kissing a pig.
Your panda will be jealous.
The panda will be jealous, yeah, but there's a world between us. And that's how you get from this to that. Thank you very much. Join a commission or a board.
Well, it is my honor this morning to introduce our speakers. We've got two. Yay! Woo! Double the fun. So, Steve and Trevin are our speakers this morning. Steve has been employed as an engineer for over 20 years, and with Thurston County for 19 of those years. He's worked on a wide variety of projects that include road construction, stormwater retrofits, water and sewer utility projects, and the fish passage projects. Don't say that 3 times fast. Trevin has been employed as a biologist, environmental engineer, and environmental coordinator for over 20 years. He is the current senior environmental coordinator for Thurston County Public Works. He processed the NEPA for local program FHWA projects for over 13 years and has held biologist and environmental positions with DOE, WDFW, and the Quileute tribe, and the Quileute tribe. He labels himself as an environmental jack of all trades and a master of none. So please join me in welcoming both Steve and Trevor.
Well, good morning. I am Steve Johnson, and we are going to talk about our Fish Passage program with Thurston County. We'll give you a little bit of background, and then we'll dive right into what we have done in the past 2 years, a little bit of forecast of what we're going to be doing in the next couple of years. So we'll start with some background.
Good morning, I'm Trevor Taylor. So a little bit of the history on it. Put your hand up if you've heard of the Bolt decision or are familiar with it. Good. So basically in 1974, for those of you that aren't familiar with it, the tribe successfully basically sued Washington State over their treaty rights. Based on about 1875, Governor Stevens' treaties that were throughout Washington State. Not all tribes matched, all had different treaties, but they all had basically one thing in common called usual and custom areas. Those usual and custom areas, as defined by the federal government at that time, basically gave them 50% of the management or 50% of the harvest. Along with that came along basically years later, there's agreements such as timber, fish, and wildlife agreements. I was actually a TFW biologist for Quinault at one point. And that system basically led to how do we manage habitat. The tribes basically have a co-management, since they have co-harvest. That basically went into Bolt 2, which is also known as the culvert case. The culvert case is what Washington Department of Transportation basically was sued over the last couple of years. So, Mr. Romero in the back there. Cesar Romero. And Chris Hutchins. The commissioners, LaCutch and the rest of them, basically Bud, and came along and basically said, hey, we're going to get ahead of this. We're going to basically be proactive. So, because the next line of sight for that tribal basically lawsuits is going to be cities and counties. We need to be able to show that we are being proactive, that we're ahead of it, that we understand we're co-managers, and that we have a program. So, how do we go about building a program?
Next would actually be just a quick definition of what is a fish passage barrier. There are two very obvious examples. There are some other ways to be a barrier, but these are the two simplest to explain and the most common as well. So the fish passage barrier on the that's got the video going, that's a fire hose effect. That's a velocity barrier. You have a large stream going through a small pipe, that water speeds up, and the fish can't get through. I don't know if you saw, but there was a fish at the entrance of that pipe, and it did not make it through. That was a full-size fish. Let's see if I can go back up there. There's that fish bouncing down. On this side, this is the vertical drop. Now, don't get confused with the fact that there's no water in that creek. Many of these streams go dry in the summer. That's not a problem. Trevor can speak to that a little bit more as we go. The problem in this side is the drop. So fish can't jump up that high to get through that pipe. Now, those are some large pipes, but we'll see that one again in a little bit. So our first step in building the program was to identify how many barriers we own. We have a very strong asset management program with the county, so we knew we had approximately 3,000 culverts that are county maintained, county owned, but not all of those are associated with streams. We had to do some digging, a little bit of research. We found we have about 300 culverts that are associated with streams in some way. Of those 300, we found that about 175 would be classified as barriers, and about 150 of those would be worth replacing, meaning there's habitat upstream, there's significant barriers, they're worth replacing. So of those 150, we then prioritized. So we have a prioritization method, a ranking system, scoring things like available habitat upstream, other barriers that may be downstream, which would reduce the value of replacing this barrier if the fish can't get to it anyway, for example. We also looked at proximity to DOT culverts. This DOT is under injunction with the law. They need to replace those. Are there any of our culverts that are in the way of their culverts? So we looked into those as well. We also considered condition of culverts, because if it's going to be failing, it's our responsibility to replace it also. But that became more of a tiebreaker. These priorities were really based on benefiting the fish. So it's a fish first program. once we had those priorities set out, we began speaking with the tribes and with other agencies, and this year we've been talking with the WIRA groups as well, to help understand what their priorities are. And also for us to make sure that we prioritize in a way that makes the most sense. We're not always going to agree. We're not always going to make everybody happy. Everybody has their own passions and interests, and they want to do it their way. We're trying to represent the county. The county has a responsibility, and we're trying to be the best for that, but also taking into consideration everybody else's input as well. Then, once we had our prioritization, we would recommend and begin for construction. Did you want to talk any more about that?
Just how unique this is. We're probably the only county or local agency in the state that is a fish first, priority first, taking into account the injunction, the lawsuit, and building a program around it. And our neighbors to the north and the south and some other groups have basically brought us in to kind of help them take a look at their own program to set this up. So once again, it's a very unique opportunity for somebody who's been doing this kind of work for a long time. I've only probably 3 times in my 25 plus years of doing this kind of work had this kind of opportunity. And this is what's unique about this one is it's truly taking into account what is the best for the habitat within Thurston County.
Now we're getting into the fun stuff. So what did we build last year? We got 5 sites built last year. You can see where they're at. They're spread across the county. We weren't trying to focus in any one area. We were looking at a priority listing, and it happened to spread it all the way across the county, which we thought was pretty cool. So our first site, 26th Avenue. You can see that the outlet end of that culvert is broken. It's an 18-inch pipe. Now the structure of the pipe going under the road was still secure. The road wasn't in any danger, just the outlet was broken. This was a fish stream, very small fish stream, that fish couldn't get through that pipe. This was a project we were able to close the road and then dig out that broken culvert, the one that had a broken end, and replace it with a much larger culvert.
Okay, so one thing we want to talk about, and part of the education of what we're doing here, is that when we think salmon, we think salmon. But if you're on my end of it as a biologist, you think salmon. Now, I'm not the world's greatest biologist, but I know this started out to get like this, okay? So when we're gonna be showing you some streams that basically are gonna look like, why did they replace that? It's going dry. So what you gotta realize a little bit, the number one fish, or basically salmon in Thurston County, is really it's about coho, okay? Coho basically have a very unique biology. They come in once a year, they spawn like everybody thinks of, but the part that you don't realize, each one of these salmon species have their own little, basically, escape system to stay away from the teeth and the predators and that. So in the case of coho, what they do is they pop out of their eggs, they button up, or basically get rid of the egg sac, and they shoot as far up in these systems as you can get. I've found them in just puddles with nothing but raccoon paws all the way around it before, up on the top of a little hill. If they can get to it, they will follow the water. They'll hang out in that water. Now, Darwinism's going to say some of these guys are going to be eaten, some of these guys have picked the wrong hole, and it did go dry. But the ones that basically for the last 20,000 years since the Ice Age found a way to follow the system back out. So we have basically a ton of fish traps in situations where they can't go with the flow. Literally, we end up with fish traps. So we're going to be talking a lot about fish, not fish, okay? Salmon, not salmon. And it was actually, for me, doing this kind of work for a long time, I didn't realize how much education was going to come along with this. So in this case here, on the downside, just right outside of there, on one of the previous pictures, right on the edge, we had fish rivering all summer. So fish basically had coho hanging out the entire summer, and there's a nice before and after. This is a very common type project, and probably the most standard out of the 5 that you're going to see that we did this last summer. It's what we call squash pipe or a oval pipe, and basically it's countersunk into the ground, opening up the stream to allow the stream once again to transport sediment, allow the gradient to basically come back down. In this case here, a couple lessons learned. We're going to let these fines fill in for a little while, and hopefully be a nice interconnected stream, and also things like leaves and limbs and all these kind of good things that basically come cover downstream and create additional pools will then be able to transport through the system.
You'll notice that's not a lot of flow in that stream, but again, we're talking fish, not fish. Our next site is Wallow Creek Road at Pants Creek. This one has a lot more flow, and this is where that video is from.
Point out the fish.
So right above my finger there, you'll see the red, and that's a 36-inch pipe. So that fish is a 30-inch fish. That's full-size spawner trying to get upstream. When we did the construction site,
dewatering and fish removal. Trevor found a lot of fish on that pool down below, but we found no fish upstream. And that's why. That fish may not have survived. And nothing got upstream from there. So for this site, we were able to use what we call an aluminum box culvert. This culvert is, it's aluminum, obviously it comes in pieces. Anybody have an erector set growing up? You would love building this culvert. I like calling this one my IKEA culvert, because it came in one flatbed truck, 3 pieces. It was very easy to load onto the contractor's truck, and run it out to the job site, and then they would just put it together. A lot of bolts, took a lot of labor, and it was kind of loud with all those, the bolts and everything just banging around. But it was a very easy job to construct. One of our lessons learned on that is for aluminum style, you want to be able to put your detour road all the way out so you can build that aluminum box in one piece. Because when you're backfilling, it will deflect. So it's really hard to build it in multiple pieces if it's deflected and then trying to bolt it back on. So that's a lesson learned for us. We were able to do that, put the bypass road all the way out. You'll notice the black pipe, that was the stream bypass. This water was flowing through the whole project. And we kept the water clean. Do you want to talk anything about that?
Super high quality water site. I probably moved over 200 fish from below that drop pool, trying to make it through the summer. We got 0 up top, basically because of the broken culvert. And it is basically all the water is in what we call gravity feed. It's my favorite way to do it. It keeps it super clean, keeps people out of the stream. We basically have fish netting upstream and downstream, and in certain cases, like where we maybe have Oregon spotted frog, which Thurston County is blessed with, we end up with basically we're going to end up with special also screening on both ends of that pipe so they wouldn't get in there. In this case, it's not frog territory, but similar type of approach that we like to use.
So there's a quick before and after. Again, that was before, fire hose effect, after, stream is flowing through that culvert. And another before and after with a slightly different perspective.
I'd like to report also that after the first actual spawning season, we actually had spotted fish on that hillside. And as of 2 weeks ago, I actually got the rearing fish, the ones that these are really all about, on the uphill side. First bullet.
This site is on Troy Drive. This is O'Connor Creek, just off of the Skookumchuck River. 2 projects of ours were on the O'Connor Creek. This one and then an upstream culvert as well. We'll talk about that one next. But Troy Drive, double 48 culverts. We were able to replace this with a bridge. This is the creek that goes dry in the summer. When it's dry in the summer, we can do a lot more work down in that wetted area, what would be wetted area. We were able to build the abutments completely in the dry. We did have an emergency flow culvert built into that hillside, just in case any rain came and water came up, but it was unnecessary. For this one, we built a prefabricated bridge. Prefabricated bridge comes in this case, 2 sections. You can see one right there. And then you just take your crane and you drop it in place, just like that. Once it's in place, you bolt it on. You can slap up some guardrail on both sides and you have a lane open. So constructability is very simple. You have to plan ahead and order these bridges with enough time for manufacturing and delivery. But they're very easy for quick construction, especially if you can't close the road. You can build half the abutments, put on one lane, and then build the other half, put the other lane in. They're very, very clean. Yes?
Is there a resale market for those?
I don't know. Anything on this one?
75-year lifespan, and honestly, Thurston County has been very proactive on kind of taking into account these prefabricated structures that you're seeing. So, in the case of, if we were to build a custom bridge like you're used to seeing, where it'd be formed bridge and concrete delivered, you're probably at least twice the cost. Because don't forget, a lot of the reasons that you're going to see some of these big numbers attached to it is that we're an earthquake country. So when we tie these 2 county roads, not only do we got the asphalt and the ASHTO standards for basically guardrails and things, but we also have to make earthquake in most of these, with pile driving and so on and so on. So by the time you add that all up, and then have the biostructure on top of it, it becomes very costly. These prefabricated structures in basically low rural areas, which we have lots of low rural areas, is the ideal situation. And 75-year lifespan is I mean, it's longer than a culvert. In some cases, we're beating, remember the squash pipe we talked about at the beginning, when we can fit these in the right places. In some scenarios, we're actually getting it cheaper than if you're using the, basically a culvert. So go to the next slide. I can't get any better than that for basically restoration. What we've done there now is daylighted the area. We've allowed fish to pass through. The barrier's gone. But also one thing that we forget about because we get so fish oriented is that's also a wildlife corridor. So in a couple of the areas where we've basically put in these prefab bridges in the past, we've, from a drone shot, we actually got a couple of deer that were poking out before the construction set was even cleared out. So basically for animals that are passing underneath that are also now not on the road. So you basically end up with a safety aspect that kind of goes unsung because we get so fish oriented here in Washington State. But yeah, that's basically, that's a pretty dramatic effect right there. You can see, and the stream's daylighted, so basically this site already, the vegetation's popping up. It's a very good looking site.
And right upstream, thank you, and right upstream from this site, we've got fish. I could go into quite a bit of detail, but there are fish swimming upstream from that bridge. We're running low on time.
I know, we'll get there. First time that, basically first time in over 20 years that they had fish this early in the system. Remember, they had to wait for the water to rise, the water had to be the right velocity to actually get them up into the system. Go ahead and go to the next one. So we talked to basically the neighbors up there, and two of them, one of them was a farmer who's been there for over 30 years. He said he's never seen so many fish that fast. So does it work? Yes, it works. It's sort of you build it and it'll come. That's what they'll say.
So this side is Plumerfelt Road, same creek system, 3 culvert arrangement. This is kind of unusual, but we found fish on the outlet real quick.
Yeah, we'll go into this a little bit. So go to, okay, so the picture up there is what is a Olympic mud minnow. You guys ever heard of Olympic mud minnow? So it's a species of one for Washington State. We had to do a little bit of adaptive management. If you go to the next one. Basically, most of these sites are basically planned for salmon enhancement. Well, in this case here, if we would have built it as a regular salmon stream with substrate, gravel, so on and so on, we would have eliminated basically a very special species of Washington State. That's a full-size fish. They're very protective, and they're known in these very terrible situations with grass and low oxygen and stuff like that. So if we would have changed that, we would have lost a species that's very important to Washington State and a priority species. So we did some adaptive science management of the roll, which is kind of a nice option that we didn't expect, but we're able to go with it.
Yeah, very, very quick. This is our final one. 100 Point Road. This is a deep culvert. There were fish found. This is a second-year class fish, meaning those coho were surviving in that drop pool, and they were not getting through that culvert. So this one was very valuable. That's the previous culvert. They couldn't get through it. Now, we had records that show that that culvert was installed about 100 years ago. So this is the first time that they've been able to get through. There's our before and after. This was our biggest culvert. This is our most expensive replacement. And the value was very, very obvious because we now have a fish going up underneath that bridge before we even finished planting. That's the first fish that we can document going up there over 100 years.
So, first time in 100 years that the 100 Point Road has basically had a run of salmon going back underneath that site there. So we're pretty happy. We're seeing some great results early, and again, we're happy to take any questions.
Yeah, you'd mentioned the Bolt decision split the harvest as well as the management 50-50 between the state and the feds and the tribes. So my question is are the tribes paying for half of these costs as well?
No.
And if they're not, I would encourage our commissioners, I'm guessing there's law that says that they don't have to, but I would encourage our commissioners to negotiate with the tribes to get some of that money. And we have an example of that with a fire department, Lacey Fire District 3, who were able to negotiate successfully with the tribes to get reimbursement for the services that they were providing, even though the feds said they didn't have to do that. So we would encourage that.
No, they're not paying for 50%. But what we do have going on is actually this summer, the Nisqually tribes actually donated over $70,000 to one of the sites we're kicking off this summer. So we are getting in there. They're seeing the value of what we're doing. When you start getting into federal tribal trust responsibilities with the feds, NOAA, U.S. Fish, things like that, Washington State's fairly well known for they're not necessarily going to go in there and enforce it in that sense. It's pretty tough because really they're adopted child of the feds. So the trust responsibility gets very sticky. Now what we are doing is we're meeting, basically we consult, but once again, it's not a consensus. Because we have the investment, we're going to basically choose the sites we're going to do. The other thing that we've done here is that we're trying to get the expensive piece out of the system. If we were to go straight in 50-50 partnership, something like Hunter Point that you saw on the last slide would have a crazy amount of additional restoration going in there. So it's kind of one of those things, be careful what you ask for, because if you go in there and have control of the project, we were going to go from basically 5 to 6 projects a year to maybe 1. And the problem is because you have the restoration that would be tied to it. So there's a give and take, you know. And in our case here, our mission was to make sure that we spent all the money that was granted and get them in the ground within 5 years. So many of these sites are basically studied to death, and they're actually something in them.
Any other questions? Thanks very much.
Goodbye to our online streaming audience this morning. Thank you for joining us. See ya. Jim Mack.